I didn't cry when I saw the wine stain. That was the first thing I noticed about myself. The dress hung from my childhood bedroom door, half-zipped, tissue paper spilling out like it had exhaled in exhaustion. My mother stood beside it, smiling the way she used to smile when my sister won debate trophies. She looked radiant, Mom said softly, as if I'd lent her a cardigan. Radiant. The lace along the waist had been stretched. The hem was grayed with outdoor dust, and there it was, a dark bloom across the silk near the hip, red, oxidizing into brown. My sister Lena appeared in the doorway behind her. Barefoot, blowing. I was so careful, she said, which in our family meant the opposite. I touched the fabric. It felt foreign now, like something borrowed from a stranger. Everyone waited for me to react. All my life I'd been good at reacting correctly. When Lena quit piano, I understood. When Lena dented Dad's car, I understood. When Lena announced her elopement 2 weeks before my wedding and needed something classic but meaningful to wear for her courthouse ceremony, I was expected to understand. And I did. Out loud. "It's fine," I said, stepping back. Mom relaxed instantly. Dad muttered something about sisterhood. Lena hugged me, careful to avoid the stain. What none of them saw was that something inside me had stopped negotiating. The dress was not just fabric. It had been the first thing I chose without committee approval. No one compared it to Lena's taste. No one asked if it was practical. I bought it quietly, paid for it myself, and kept it sealed in its garment bag like a private victory. Seeing it altered, literally reshaped to fit her, felt less like damage and more like confirmation. I wasn't surprised. What surprised me was how calm I felt, because when I unzipped the garment bag fully, something small slipped out from the inner seam and landed at my feet. A folded document. Lena's. She must have tucked it there in haste, probably hiding it from Mom while changing. I recognized the letterhead immediately. Hawthorne and Blythe Consulting, the firm where I worked, the firm where Lena had recently applied. I didn't open it right away. I didn't need to. I already knew. She had mentioned an offer at dinner last week, vague and triumphant. Mom had looked at me as if Lena's ambition was a joint family achievement. "You should put in a good word," Mom had said. I had smiled and said, "Of course." Now the letter was creased, unofficial, clearly a draft copy, not yet finalized. An employment agreement contingent on background verification and internal reference confirmation. My signature line was printed at the bottom. Internal reference, Senior Operations Review, M. Bennett. Me. The only person standing between Lena and a six-figure position. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back inside the envelope. The wine stain no longer felt like the story. I didn't bring it up at home. Instead, on Monday morning, I walked into the glass building downtown where I'd worked for 8 years, quietly, reliably, without spectacle. Lena arrived an hour later for her final in-person confirmation meeting. She wore a navy blazer and the same confidence she'd worn my dress in. She saw me in the lobby and grinned. "Big day," she said. "For you," I replied. She assumed warmth in my tone. That was her habit, mistaking neutrality for support. The HR director, Ms. Calloway, greeted us both. "We'll just need final internal clearance before we issue the formal contract." Lena glanced at me playfully. "My sister's tough but fair," she joked. There it was again, the script. I would be tough in private, fair in public, protective, accommodating. We moved into the conference room. Ms. Calloway began with routine confirmations, education, prior employment. Then she paused. "One item flagged in preliminary review," she said, scanning her tablet. "There appears to be an unresolved client compliance issue linked to your previous firm." Lena's smile flickered. "That's a misunderstanding," she said quickly. Ms. Calloway nodded. "We're open to clarification. However, our internal review requires confirmation from the Senior Operations Reviewer." She turned to me. The room felt smaller. I didn't look at Lena. I looked at the tablet in front of me, where the incident report summary had already been uploaded, a report I had reviewed months ago in a completely separate context, a procurement irregularity, nothing criminal, but serious enough to disqualify someone from handling sensitive accounts. At the time, I hadn't realized the initials on the document belonged to her. Now I did. "Is the issue substantiated?" Miss Calloway asked me directly. Lena's knee brushed mine under the table. A silent plea. Or warning. All my life I had softened answers for her. This time I kept my voice even. "Yes," I said, "it was substantiated. Documentation was signed and archived." Silence. It wasn't dramatic. No one gasped. No one shouted. Ms. Calloway nodded slowly. "In that case, we'll need to rescind the offer pending further review. Company policy." There it was, authority, procedural, impersonal, unmistakable. Lena turned to me then, disbelief spreading like the stain on silk. "You didn't have to," she started. I met her eyes calmly. I answered the question. Miss Calloway closed her tablet. "Thank you both for your time." The meeting ended the way most things at Hawthorne and Blythe ended, efficiently. At dinner that week, Mom kept waiting for me to explain what had happened. "She said there was some misunderstanding," Mom pressed gently. "I'm sure she'll clarify it," I said. Dad looked confused more than angry. They weren't used to outcomes they couldn't smooth over. Lena didn't come to dinner. The dress still hangs in my closet. I had it cleaned. The stain faded but didn't disappear. The hem remained slightly uneven where it was altered. I don't plan to replace it. It reminds me of the day I stopped auditioning for fairness inside my family and started practicing it outside of them. Lena and I haven't spoken about the meeting. She sent one text, "You chose your job over me." I didn't reply. Because that wasn't what happened. For the first time, I chose accuracy. The favoritism hasn't vanished. My parents still use words like miscommunication. They still look at me with that quiet expectation of elasticity. But something subtle has shifted. When Lena calls now, she doesn't assume I'll answer immediately. When Mom suggests I help smooth things over, her voice carries uncertainty. The power isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. The dress was never ruined beyond repair. It was simply altered. So was I.